Hello, everybody. Thank you for tuning in to the Liberty Report. With me today is Daniel McAdams, the co-host. Daniel, good to see you.
Good morning, Dr. Paul.
Good. I want to talk a little bit about Obama's foreign policy and some of his tactics, which he doesn't own completely because I think he is supported by all the neocons in both political parties, obviously. And that has to do with the drone warfare. There was hope early on that he might do less of this drone warfare where innocent civilians get killed, and it's in the news, sorta. And he, a couple years ago, said, want to do away with it. But it seems like right now we're getting information that he's actually accelerating it. And there was a Pentagon report that said, well, we're going to be doing more of this. At least that's what they were insinuating. So therefore, we have to accept the fact that there will be more civilian casualties. And the absurdity of it all is maybe we'll even permit up to 10 civilian casualties per hit. So if they're after one guy and there's 10 more, it doesn't matter. Nobody really cares about that. And so that is the policy. And it looks like it's here to stay. I mean, we could tell this a long time ago that it was sort of the substitute for war, the sterility of the drone. And for some reason they believed that nobody would notice. Well, the Americans don't notice. The Congress doesn't notice. Nobody seems to complain here. The candidates for presidency, they don't seem to care about it. Someone wants to expand it. So why don't we talk a little bit about why is this so dangerous? I mean, is this the way to spread goodwill? Is this a way to spread American exceptionalism? I think you might have a different answer for that.
Well, you know, we heard about the Black Lives Matter group, and then some people said all lives matter. I think the Obama policy is no lives matter.
Right.
You know, and it's this article, and then we first spotted on anti-war, and then I found another one on USA Today's site. But the Pentagon is employing new rules for drone strikes, and as you pointed out, up to 10 civilians can be killed in each strike depending on the targets. And what I found interesting is that they use a sliding scale of how many civilians might be killed versus the target. It reminded me when I was a little kid and we learned about how evil the Caesars were and how they would have people paraded in front of them and they would do a thumbs up or a thumbs down, you know, you live or you die. It strikes me as that's somewhere in the bowels of the Pentagon. Someone is doing that, and it just shows the evil at the heart of the imperial enterprise.
Well, do we have any evidence that the people there on the receiving end are a bit annoyed? I think there was a picture or a cartoon. Was this a cartoon or an actual picture of people speaking out against the drone strikes?
Well, this is an actual mural, and if we can get it up on the screen, I'm sure a lot of people have seen it, but I've always found this very powerful. And if we could full screen it, it's just really it captures how people feel in these countries. There's a little boy painting on the wall, U.S. drones, why did you kill my family? And you can imagine how that would feel. Although the U.S. has dropped 40,000 bombs, and it only admits to 26 civilian deaths. So maybe we're getting all worked up over nothing.
Yeah, and you know, we're mainly talking about the drones and the deceit of the drone warfare. But still, we have the liability or the responsibility of many other bombs being dropped, not only by our own airplanes, like under a NATO attack or something. It's all our weapons, our planes and things. But what about a country like Saudi Arabia? I think they tend to be an ally of ours. Not that it doesn't look like the president's going to do much to investigate the Saudis' involvement in 9/11. But they're using our weapons, and they're fighting a major war over there. We have to have a moral responsibility of the deaths in Yemen as well.
Yeah, well, at the Institute, we put up a piece that David Swanson wrote. He's an anti-war activist and writer, wrote today, and he pointed out that shortly after the Saudis gave $10 million to the Clinton Foundation, Secretary of State Clinton approved a huge arms sale package to Saudi Arabia. So yeah. I'm sure that wasn't related at all.
Well, you know, it's hard to believe how extensive this is. I bet you, according to some of the interviews of young people on the street, you hear about who's the first president of the United States and they don't know, that sort of thing. Well, I'll bet there's not too many that would know exactly how many countries were involved in using drones. Matter of fact, I don't think I could have given the right answer if I hadn't just recently read it, because it's, and I'm not even sure I have the financial. final answer on that. But right now, it looks like drones have been used rather regularly in 7 different countries. You know, starting with Libya and Somalia, Yemen, Iraq, Afghanistan, Pakistan, Syria. And we're using these bombs constantly. In these reports, that only a few civilian deaths of the collateral damage. And I think the evidence is pretty strong. I think, and especially Pakistan, you know, that sort of goes unnoticed. There were more than 3,000 killed there. They can't all be, you know, the militant jihadists who have been mobilized mainly because we've been bombing them, you know. So it's really a deceitful thing, and it upsets me to no end that no one cares. Who cares in the Congress? How many speeches are being given? Matter of fact, it annoys me that we have one of these candidates who says we have to bomb them a lot more and use nuclear weapons if we need to. It's total insanity on the reaction to this, and purposely, you know, what Trump is saying is this thing that we're complaining about, you know, collateral damage. He doesn't want to mess around with that soft stuff. He wants to say, we must make it a policy that we kill the families of people we suspect of being jihadists, and that should disturb Americans. It's such a shame that goes by. Media doesn't care. The Congress doesn't care. If the Congress cared, they could stop the money.
Yeah.
Stop the money.
The thing about these 7 countries you mentioned, there are many places the U.S. uses drones that are literally no threat to the United States in any conceivable manner. For example, in Somalia, there's civil unrest going on. There are factions that are fighting. The chance of them getting on a plane or a boat and coming to attack the U.S. is virtually zero. Much like in the Syrian civil war, it's not even a civil war, in the Syrian war, the chance of this being a threat to the U.S. is almost nothing. But the media in the U.S., which we often complain about, and rightly so, I think, they present this whole thing as a false choice. And I detected this in the USA Today article. They say, on the one hand, there's Obama who's trying his best to avoid civilian casualties. He's doing his best. But these conservatives are saying, oh, he's not doing enough. And so the compromise is him ramping up the killing. Nowhere do they talk about the side of the non-interventionists who's saying, not only from a moral perspective, but from a practical perspective, this does not work. It makes us more dangerous, more of a threat to the U.S., makes us more vulnerable. The media doesn't present this side.
Yeah, you know, the problem with not accepting non-intervention and a clear-cut difference is that there's too much incrementalism, you know, where we come along here and the politicians keep supporting it. And, you know, I was surprised to read that this is something that Sanders even supports. And he's sort of the so-called peace candidate from the left, but he supports it. You know, when I was in Congress, we used to work, you know, with some progressive Democrats who were pretty good at stopping war, but it was never stop the intervention. It was, and some of the realists will go along with it. Let's use sanctions. Let's use sanctions. Let's use things that are just modified. But there's still the use of aggression against somebody, and they aggravate people and they make them angry and this sort of thing. So they go over with sanctions, and then they go over, well, these drones has just sort of filled the void. We can really punish these people without going to war. We don't have to report the statistics of American soldiers being killed. But they don't realize that if you're building up hostility and hatred for years and years to come, it's going to exist. We cannot continue with this policy without the anger growing and the desire to kill more Americans and the desire to retaliate against us. If we continue this, 7 countries now, there may be more already, and it's going to continue because Obama expanded it when he said he was going to stop it. Republicans aren't going to stop it. And even the independent thinking Republicans are saying we need more, more, more. And they never say, well, you know, maybe we have some responsibility for just inciting the hatred against us and the attacks that are upon us. And unless we get to that, this belief that forever the antagonism toward us is because we're free and prosperous and great Americans and they resent us and they're jealous of us. Well, that is just the biggest misconception in the world, and they have to continue to build up this hatred, and that's why there's not much help in the media from this to get the truth out about it, and there's not much help in the political system as well to get a message out that said that this is going to end badly, just as economic intervention. A lot of people are saying correctly, and they agree with us, we can't continue this spending, it's going to end badly, we just can't keep printing money. But they don't very often say that we have to quit this intervention instead of saying let's massively expand and kill more people. What they're saying, they don't accept the idea that maybe we ought to just come home.
Yeah. It seems like we've almost fallen under the spell of some sort of a sociopathic pathology where the Americans are just somehow incapable of viewing these drone strikes from the perspective of someone on the receiving end. They're viewed, as you pointed out, as some surgical strikes where nobody's hurt but the bad guys, much better than war. They fail to be able to see themselves like this little boy writing on the wall, why did you kill my family? How would it feel? But the other thing, and you've alluded to it, but we should probably bring it up more directly, there was a foreign policy piece in Foreign Policy magazine a couple of days ago that I clipped and hoped we could work into a show, and thankfully we can. But remember back in May 2013, President Obama, there was a lot of pressure on these signature strikes. A signature strike is when you don't know the person or people that you're hitting. You simply strike certain characteristics. A male of military age who's hanging around in an area where you think there might be militants is deemed a legitimate target. And that had rightly come under scrutiny of human rights groups and people who recognize how completely evil it is. Well, the pressure caused Obama in 2013, May 2013, to release a glossy brochure about how we're going to rein this in, we're going to stop these signature strikes that are killing so many innocents. And then it dropped. And that's it. And it continues to this day as it did before. No change in the signature strike, which I think is probably the singular most evil aspect of these drone wars.
I was thinking while you were saying that about what opportunities others would have if they were in the driver's seat, and thinking about, well, I wonder how many males between the age of 18 and 25 or some number like that are hanging around a street corner someplace. I mean that's an everyday occurrence. Or a high school kid, hanging around. Oh well, he looks suspicious, but he's signature, so we'll go get him. And it's the whole concept of justice that to people suspect people, and this is the whole thing about the use of torture for our national candidates to say we need more torture as part of this program. It's so far removed from what we should be doing that it doesn't wake the American people up. The American people say, yes, we have to be tough, and if you're not tough, you're not for America. Well, maybe you can be for America if you're for liberty and equal justice and minding our own business, and yet still have a strong national defense and have a greater amount of security. I see that we have less security under these conditions because we're going to go broke, and it's going to be more difficult to defend our countries. And there's going to be a lot of people really hacked off at us, and we're going to have a difficult time. But this jingoistic mood that the country is in, and just throw things at people. They wanted to move back to the dark ages of mercantilism and no free trade, no travel, build up, walls and all this. I think that is going absolutely in the wrong direction.
It's amazing the concept of toughness. How can it be tough when you expend all of your resources to the point, it'd be like a guy walking around the beach fighting everyone until he's beaten up so bad that he can't even fight a weakling. There's nothing tough in doing stupid and hitting your head against the wall consistently.
Well, what do you think the odds are in the next year or two or after the next election, regardless of we don't know who will be the president, of this policy changing for the better?
Very, very little chance of anything positive. That's why we have to redouble our efforts.
That's good. And I think that is true. It seems difficult for us to reach a large audience, but I did just get a report today that our audience is growing by leaps and bounds, which is very, very encouraging to me because we're trying to get information out that you're not going to hear on TV, and you're not going to hear the reports, and you're not going to be questioned about why doesn't the Congress do anything about it? Why do they continue to finance this? Why do they never change the policy? So yes, I'm encouraged by that, but in the short run, things are going to be difficult because more and more Americans now know that we can't get away with this spending and printing of money, and more of the politicians are saying this, and that's very good. But the political situation is if you start cutting anything right now, there'll be riots in the streets because they have been taught to have entitlements. Well, this is the way it is in foreign policy. There are certain countries that feel entitled to our defense of them, and that we have to do it. And a lot of Americans believe that we have this moral and financial responsibility to take care of everybody, never realizing that it's making the situation much worse. This is the reason that we want to emphasize there is an answer to this. It's not complex. It's very simple. At the same time that we would like to decrease the expenditure, we can have a different foreign policy and save a lot of money running around the world, creating more enemies, and at the same time helping our budget. But right now, there's no evidence that this is going to happen. But believe me, more Americans are waking up and starting to realize that day is coming, and we ought to be prepared for what we're going to substitute for getting rid of this terrible system that we have today of interventionism throughout the whole system, whether it's intervention in our lives, the loss of our personal privacy, intervention in the economy with an economy in chaos, and intervention overseas where we do nothing but interfere and create chaos all around the world and create more enemies. I do want to thank everybody for tuning in today to the Liberty Report. Please come back soon.